Hey guys, this is Norby of CTCM Radio, a station for all nations, and we're here with another show, another video, and if you're listening on our podcast, another presentation, another special presentation. On the last special presentation, we merged two shows, Worship Team Foundations and His Kids Ministry, with Marissa Robinson. And now we're going to have another special presentation in which we showcase three different ministries. Worship Team Foundations, as it is with Worship Ministry. And with our special guest, we're going to have Mozen Ministry, Family Ministry, Mother Ministry, Stay-at-home Mom Ministry, homeschooling ministry, every ministry that you can think of under the sun. When it comes to a mom and a woman of God, this is Mozen. And our special guest also is a part of the women's ministry. If you've seen other or listened to any other podcasts or watch any other of our podcasts content on our YouTube page as well, you've seen her there as well. And also, I'm actually going to even pilot a third show in this episode, which is called Mirage, which is a play of words I'm using to say marriage, because we are also talking about this subject matter as well towards the end of this video, or during one of the last parts. As you know, we make these shows in parts because we like to take our time, we like to be unscripted, and we like to make sure that we can flow and open up our hearts and our minds to whatever God wants us to talk about within this content that we're bringing to you today. So again, recap. We're doing Worship Team Foundations. We're also doing Mozen Ministry, and we're also doing Mirage, a pilot of Mirage. So I'm very happy today to introduce a very special person in my life that's helped me in many different ways. And I'm not going to tell you who she is personally to me yet, unless you already know who we are. But if this is your first time watching these two faces together on camera, then we will let you know at the end when we get to the marriage part who we are together, if you haven't already figured it out. So today we have Carmen Colon. We share the same last name. That's already a hint for you. And so we have her here because which is why we're having three shows showcased, because she overlaps a lot of different ministries at Commitment Church, where we currently are. And it's a blessing to see how God, very much so how, like, I've showcased in all the different shows that I had guests with me, that I overlap many ministries myself in worship and all the different things that we do here at Commitment, but we also have Carmen that also overlaps in many ministries as well, as it relates to worship, her own ministry, Mozen. As I mentioned before, she's in other episodes in the women's ministry because she's a part of that, but we'll also showcase a little bit of like what Mirage is going to be about, and kind of talk a little bit about that with her. So Carmen, thank you for, it's so weird for me to even call you Carmen because I call you something else, and you'll see at the end if you don't know. It's because it's funny, like, I don't know how many times people don't associate us, and a lot of times it's because there's always this unsaid, kind of, vibe, this thing that we throw off that, like it doesn't warrant, marriage. It doesn't warrant a unity in that way because of the way we do ministry together. It's a different thing altogether. So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Oh, well, what do I think? That's a good question. I don't think much about it. Like, to me, especially being involved so much in ministry and in church, to me, when I walk into the sanctuary, I'm all about what God wants to do, kind of thing, I'm all about worshiping him. I'm all about, of course I have 3 children, so I'm like, making sure they're good, they're next to me, and they're behaving, kind of thing, but focused on really what God will is for this day, kind of thing. So in reference to people, even knowing who we are as, together, it you probably wouldn't know unless we actually say something, because you're busy, sorry, you're busy, playing on stage and worshiping. And even when I'm on stage, during this worship time, that's what we're there to do. We're there to be used by God as a tool, not to be seen as a couple or a marriage or a husband and wife or anything for that matter. Even as an individual, is more of being seen, not us per se, but God through us, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's a healthy perspective to go into ministry. I don't know how many guys I talk to, possibly even, other females, that they all kind of say the same thing. It's hard to work with your husband or wife. Like if you share the same job and you're at the same place of work, most people prefer not to have their spouses work together, because there's always going to be some sort of friction or weirdness, some awkwardness because of our behaviors that we tend to develop in workplaces. Relationships that we otherwise wouldn't have if it wasn't in the workplace. So it gets very, it could be dicey, it could be controversial, it could be whatever it becomes at the moment when you're there, because on your own, we tend to be, and this is the same with church and being at church for ministry and performing. We tend to be one thing at church and then another thing at home. And that's the same at work. That's the same maybe at family gatherings. We tend to have these like roles that we tend to want to take all the time that are different than what we can actually, who we actually are at home. And I know for me in the beginning, it was very hard for me to separate that, because, I think that the teaching wasn't there inside of me to know, these are all in the same people, but there weren't characteristics that showed that I was the same person throughout all of the roles that I play in life, until very later in life, where I'm like primarily a leader in a ministry, where now it's like, okay, I have to be this Norby at worship. I have to be this Norby, worship meaning like in ministry, on stage, at the church, at work. But then I'm also this same Norby at home, and I'm also the same Norby in family gatherings. I'm also the same Norby at the supermarket, at work, wherever you are. There has to be a development of your character that says that you're the same person wherever you are. And whenever people see you, they're like, oh, that's Norby, but not the Norby like other people may see Norby. Like when I grew up in my youth, I was that punchline, fun, like, let's go out with Norby to do all these types of things. He's the guy you go out with to do that. And then when church came around, oh, that's the musician. That's Norby. He plays piano. He's a worship leader over there, but he's serious about what he does, and he's not the jokey kind of guy and the punchline kind of guy and the fun kind of guy. He just does this, and then and that's it. And then later on in future, I got married, and then after that, there's another Norby there that, I don't know if you guys like kind of relate with this as well, as, you're first a guy on your own in your own place, and then you get married, and now you have a wife, and then after that you have kids, and so how would you talk and speak into understanding in your perspective, coming from the wife, coming from the woman, coming from being a daughter, coming from being a sibling, which is also very unique to me because I don't have any siblings, but seeing that perspective of my evolution, how would you speak into that? What kind of things did you learn from like seeing my growth in life? Because you've seen me from the very beginning. I mean, we went to the same high school for a certain point of time. You saw me in both kind of sides of the fence. So what would you say to that? Like, what were your observations
about you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well,
yeah.
going all the way back to to high school, I would say you were the, the I guess typical teenage boy, where he's trying to grab all the attention he can get, kind of thing. All about flirting with the females and making himself look good because you're a musician, and a lot of attention seeking.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes, I know that guy. Yeah, I know that guy.
A lot of attention seeking.
Yeah.
I think comparing then to now, it is a big difference. Now I see the daddy figure, making sure that he's on top of things with the children in communication, especially, oh my gosh, you even taught me how to communicate, because I struggled with that for many years, communicating with you correctly or even at all. And just always trying to be there, that seriousness now, even for God and in your relationship with Christ, has been a big change. It's more about, your role as a leader and your role in the eyes of Christ, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot more seriousness to it. You still have your time moments when you're goofy or whatever, but we all do. I'm a very serious person, but I have my moments when I can get silly or goofy, as a family. That's the fun part of it, but it's balanced out. I feel like it's so much better now than we definitely were before.
So speaking of balance, so Mozen, it's a ministry. What is Mozen?
Well, Mozen is the Hebrew word for balance. It's something God showed me back in, I want to say 2016, 2015, around there. We were going through a really hard time in life, financially, and a lot of different changes of different things. At that time, we only had 2 children. And during those hard times is when he pretty much showed me a vision of the ministry that he wanted me to lead, the type of ministry he wanted me to lead. Not in reference to all people at the time. It was more personal. It was more of, learning how to be the mom, the daughter, the sister, the friend, the wife, the leader, in a balanced manner, not losing my mind and going crazy because there's all these roles, all these responsibilities, and now I have no clue where to go or where to start, and I'm big in going and thinking too much. So, and of course, I'm
that's
I'm
the artist in us. Yep.
Definitely an overthinker, and I think that's where God was calling me out. Pretty much, He was calling me out to say, I need you to focus. I need you to learn the balance in it all, because it all comes together. It all works together for His good. So.
Yeah, and a lot of the things that I learned about being the same across the board has been from her example, right? Like just seeing how you are in life, you are the same Carmen, the same Evie, as everybody calls you, across the board. And I struggle with that a lot because I was an attention seeker in specific things without understanding that it was more so like I wanted to divide the attention and not put it together because I didn't see it existing together, because the way I was brought up, church is this serious stuffy thing. And you don't mess around with that. You don't play with that and not have fun with it. And then, once you clock out of the, service, you freak out and be whoever you want to be, even if it's inappropriate or wrong or out there. And then, then you go home, you're down from your high of having all this fun. And then not many people know this about me, but my wife can tell you, she sees me in my natural state at home where I'm quiet to myself, and sometimes maybe too quiet to myself, where it's just me and either the TV's there or I'm in my headphones or whatever it is. I'm not conversational. I'm not very communicative at home because of whatever reason in my mind, I'm here. I'm just, I'm where I can be myself, which most of the time is really to myself, and it takes a lot for me and conversations we've had to kind of come out of that mindset of, isolation, because a part of what isolation tends to bring out in you is a selfish nature, because your selfishness feeds the want and the need to isolate, because you don't want to share, you don't want to open up and communicate, you don't want to just have that openness that brings a marriage, that brings to be a father, and that frankly all of that teaches you to be good at ministry that way too, but none of that happens when I'm at home sitting there, because none of those roles take a precedence in my mind when I'm home, because I don't have to deal with people, or I don't have to talk about my feelings, I don't have to do anything. But there have been moments, right, where I'll sit on the bed and I'll break down and crying, because of whatever comes to my mind at the moment. God will bring it to memory. God will rise these emotions up that all of a sudden I'm just sitting around folding laundry with my wife and I just start, bawling out, because I continue to contain my feelings that I'm supposed to be sharing on a normal basis. I'm supposed to be expressing and showing vulnerability in ministry as a character myself, as a person in ministry. And if you hold all this stuff in, I'm not, and usually I wasn't the chief one that did that. It's funny to think about that now, because you were the one that really did that a lot. Mm-hmm. You closed up. You never said anything until you blew up and cuss me out, and it would be like, yo, what is going on? And there was so many times, right, that in the beginning of our ministry, in the beginning of our marriage, I'll run to the pastor, be like, yo, she tripping, she telling me off. And then it would be one of those things where he'll look at me and be like, what did you do? And I'm like, what you mean what I did? I ain't do anything.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
She's the one telling me off about I don't know what. And it's it turns out, guys, that we are the heads of the household, not just by saying it, not just because the Bible, says we're heads of the household, but spiritually. The Bible claims it, but most of the time we don't claim it ourselves. We read it, we preach it, but we don't claim it ourselves. Spiritually, it turns right back around to you. So it's almost like those moments in the beginning where we didn't know how to communicate to each other. It would always fall back on me as the head of the household, whether I liked it or not. So most of the conversations early on had to do with what did I do as a man to provoke and create this atmosphere that wasn't healthy for communication. And it was crazy because I had to always look at myself. Every time she would freak out and do something crazy, before we were even married, she would take off her promise ring and throw it on the floor in the street and be like, I'm done, I'm out of here. And she'll drive off, and I'm like, yo, 3 times I think that happened, and a lot of times it was just really a lack of communication. The way that we think we're supposed to communicate, we're not communicating it. Right. And it makes that into a serious problem coming into the marriage if you don't deal with this early on. So you guys that are aspiring to become one with someone, check that, because it'll get to the point where it's going to catch up with you. If you are a good communicator early on, you'll have less and less moments of frustration and of arguments. Not that there'll never be arguments. There's always going to be arguments in a marriage, but there'll be less of those arguments, and even the ones that you do have are much more rational. They're in a place where you can talk, where you can understand each other, and kind of get to a place where you don't. And this is one of the rules, right, we have at home, is that we don't ever go to bed angry at each other. We don't ever go to bed with that mindset of we're not done with this yet. We're still got this conversation hanging over our heads for a week or 2 or 3. Mm-hmm. That doesn't happen. And it's crazy. It should get to the point where you don't remember the last time you argued. you know. And if you do remember, it was because it was meaningful. It wasn't just some crazy whatever, you know. Most of the time, what is it? Money, you know.
Yeah, for the
you
most
know,
part.
money. Yeah, like that's like
Or
probably
the-
number
or
one.
maybe
I mean, here's the deal. Like, that's fine if you want to talk about money, but like,
Well, you're kind of the master of using money to mess with people's lives.
well, yeah, because here's the deal.
Tell us your strategy.
And money has a way of just taking over like someone's heart. You know, it's looking for servant. Here, let me see this. Let me. I know this is weird.
You want my Bible?
No, this is weird.
This
isn't
is
it?
weird.
Are you gonna read this again after now? or
Satan's
what?
going to read my Bible?
Well, hey, don't let this show up on YouTube either. Matthew 6, verse 24. No one can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. I'm kind of honored. God's not saying you can't serve both God and me, or both God and like sex or something, which we know is awesome. He's saying you can't serve God and money. You know, it's because money is 100% or nothing. You know what I'm saying? It like takes over your heart. You know.
So how do you do it when you're trying to use money to mess people up?
You got to go get the new car. You got to go buy new things. You got to go buy the new video game system, or this is what I love, right? This is what I love. You can't wear that shirt. That's so last season. You know, as if clothes are just gone in like 6 months. It's great. No, this is great.
So Satan, what do you think about credit cards?
Love them.
You love them.
Great.
Nothing wrong with them.
Nope.
Do you pay yours off?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, with another one. No interest. 6 months. They got a good deal. Corporate ladder completely fueled my money. Tears families apart because people have to work all the time now, which is great. Here's the deal. If you really want to see people squirm, though, you just drop the stock market 300 points.
Did you do that?
No, I'm not saying I did that, but but it works. Here's the deal. Maybe I'm an addict. I got a problem. I love to get people to serve money. I mean, fudging some numbers on an expense report, cheating on their taxes. I personally don't do that because I use TurboTax. Here, okay, another verse. I know. I'm sorry. This is a major faux pas. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil. That's good though. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. Here's the deal. I don't agree with a lot of what this says, but that's good stuff. The root of all kinds of evil. Craig, this is me. This is like right up my alley. What have you always said? What have you always said about me?
I've always said Satan is bad.
All the time, and all the time.
Satan is bad.
Absolutely.
And it always comes back to the money too. You know, it's like everything, like whether it's sex, whether it is, the kids, whether it's like the house, it always revolves back to money because, the Bible says that it is the root of all evil, right? Not having money, but the love of money. Your love for the money is the root to all evil. And, and sometimes we don't see that the love of money is the desires that our flesh want. And the enemy's very astute. He'll come and, deceive us, and he'll put a price on everything that you desire. And that's how he gets us in our minds, is like, well, okay, you want this. Well, this is how much it costs, and you'll have to work all this, deny your family, deny your children to get this stuff. So balance is a big deal.
Yeah, and another point in reference to what you were saying about how it all comes back to the man. As a female, and as the wife, it's our responsibility to give the man their place. Like I was raised to be hardcore. You know how to do everything. You work, you make your own money, you have your own bank account, you take care of yourself. You don't need no man to take care of you. And I have both parents. I had a mother and a father, but they both raised me to be very, very independent. I don't need, if you have kids and things are going wrong or something's up financially, you do what you got to do to take care of your family. That was the attitude. That was the way I was taught or was brought up. And that was hard for me in the beginning with our marriage, and hence why many times I probably cussed my poor husband out. And I laugh now, but it wasn't funny then. It was very hard. It was very, emotional roller coaster for both of us, but but I had to learn how to give him his place. And I had to unlearn to learn. You know, I had to unlearn to learn again, and learn the right way, the godly way, the biblical way, however you want to say it. But, you know, really, really allow myself to build that personal relationship with Christ, to where he can guide me and speak to me on how to be the wife I needed to be for my husband. You know, and again, that's taken years. Until this day, we're not perfect. You know, we're not perfect, but I have learned to give him his place.
Yeah, and it's not an oppressing thing, right?
Absolutely not.
Like it's freeing, I would say, and you can attest to this, that, you know, it's when you learn your role in your place in a marriage, you know, there's a freedom that God brings to that now there's a natural balance that's happening when you start thinking about each other as equals in the marriage, and not as I'm your boss or the other way around. In either way, that you see that a lot in different relationships as you grow up. You'll see a lot of that, you know, different examples in family dynamics where you'll have like the women in the house are more so the ones that lead, or the men in the house are the ones that lead mostly, and the women are kind of oppressed to not say a word, and they're the ones that are sitting in the corner always looking like they can't say nothing. You can even see it in the children dynamic, you know, where kids are afraid of whichever side is the lead at that moment. And, you know, and even in that, like, let's say there's a difference, you know, like we teach our children, there's a difference between yelling at somebody and authority. Okay, and that's a very important thing to understand. Yelling and authority. You know, there's a difference between being afraid of someone and respecting someone. Absolutely. You know, and the enemy is a mastermind, and not to give him too much credit, but at the end of the day, he's a mastermind, and that's what he does, to deceive us to not know the difference between the two. That when anger rises and things rise up, we're like, you know, ballistically going crazy and thinking that we have a right and an entitlement to go in and tear each other apart emotionally.